The scream that tore through the midnight air sent Mitchell Wayne's hand straight to his revolver, his boots hitting the floorboards before his mind fully registered consciousness. He burst through the door of his ranch house into the cool California night, heart hammering as he scanned the darkness for the source of that terrified cry. The barn door stood slightly ajar, lamplight flickering from within, and Mitchell moved toward it with the practiced silence of a man who had survived 3 years of border wars and countless confrontations with rustlers. What he found inside stopped him cold. A young woman pressed against the far wall between 2 horse stalls, her dress torn and muddy, dark hair wild around her pale face, eyes wide with the kind of fear that came from being hunted. "Easy now," Mitchell said softly, holstering his gun and raising both hands to show he meant no harm. "You are safe here. Nobody is going to hurt you." The woman did not respond, just stared at him with those enormous eyes, her whole body trembling like a cornered animal. Mitchell could see scratches on her arms, dirt under her fingernails, and the way she held herself suggested she had been running for a long time. He took a slow step backward, giving her space. "My name is Mitchell Wayne. This is my ranch just outside Red Bluff. You are in California, and whatever you are running from, it cannot reach you here." He kept his voice low and steady, the same tone he used with spooked horses. "There is a house about 50 yards from here. My sister Emma lives there with me. She can help you get cleaned up, get you some food, whatever you need." The woman's lips parted, but no sound came out. Mitchell waited, patient as stone, until finally she managed a whisper so quiet he barely heard it. "They will find me." "Who will find you?" She shook her head violently, pressing herself harder against the wall. Mitchell recognized that look. He had seen it on the faces of Confederate soldiers in the last days of the war, on settlers who had lost everything to drought and desperation. This was a woman who had reached the absolute limit of what she could endure. "All right," Mitchell said gently. "You do not have to tell me anything right now, but you cannot stay out here all night. Let me at least bring you a blanket and some water. Will you allow that?" After a long moment, she gave the smallest nod. Mitchell backed out of the barn slowly, never taking his eyes off her until he reached the door. The September night air in Red Bluff carried a hint of the approaching autumn, cool enough to raise goosebumps on his arms as he hurried to the house. Inside, he grabbed a thick wool blanket, a canteen of fresh water, and some bread and cheese from the kitchen. His sister Emma would have known what else to bring, but Emma had gone to Sacramento to visit their aunt, and would not return until the end of the week. Mitchell was on his own. When he returned to the barn, the woman had not moved. He set the supplies on a barrel about 10 feet from where she stood, then retreated to the barn entrance. "There you go. Take what you need. I will be in the house if you require anything else. The barn door locks from the inside, if that makes you feel safer." He started to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Thank you." Mitchell turned back. In the lamplight, he could see her more clearly now. She could not have been more than 22 or 23, with delicate features that would have been beautiful if not twisted by fear and exhaustion. Her dress, though filthy and torn, had once been fine quality, the kind of garment a wealthy woman might wear. Whatever her story was, it was complicated. "What is your name?" Mitchell asked. She hesitated for so long he thought she would not answer. Then, Zara Owens." "Well, Miss Owens, you are welcome to stay in this barn as long as you need, but come morning, I hope you will consider coming inside. September in California can be pleasant, but the nights get cold, and you look like you could use a proper meal and a real bed." Zara pulled the blanket around her shoulders, still watching him with that wary, hunted expression. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you need help," Mitchell said simply. "And because I suspect you have good reason for whatever brought you here in the middle of the night. A man who judges before he knows the full story is not much of a man at all." He left her then, returning to the house, though he knew sleep would not come easy. Mitchell sat by the window that faced the barn, keeping watch through the remaining hours of darkness. He had built this ranch from nothing after the war ended in 1865, spending 5 hard years breaking land, raising cattle, and establishing himself as one of the more successful ranchers in the Red Bluff area. It was 1870 now, and Mitchell had finally begun to feel like he had made something lasting, something good. The war had taken enough from him. This ranch, this life, was his chance at peace. But peace had a way of being disrupted. and as Mitchell watched the barn through the pre-dawn darkness, he wondered what storm had just arrived on his doorstep in the form of Zara Owens. Morning came with the golden light that made California beautiful, painting the rolling hills beyond Mitchell's property in shades of amber and bronze. He had dozed fitfully in his chair, and now he rose stiffly, stretching the kinks from his back as he prepared coffee and a proper breakfast. He cooked extra, setting aside a plate piled high with eggs, bacon, and biscuits, then carried it out to the barn along with a cup of hot coffee. Zara was exactly where he had left her, though she had wrapped the blanket around herself and appeared to have eaten some of the bread and cheese. Her eyes tracked him as he approached, still fearful but not quite as wild as before. "Brought you breakfast," Mitchell said, setting the plate and cup on the barrel. "Fresh coffee, too. Nothing fancy, but it is hot and filling." "You keep feeding me like I'm a stray cat," Zara said, and there was the faintest hint of something that might have been humor beneath the exhaustion. "Well, I have been told I have a soft spot for creatures in need," Mitchell replied with a slight smile. "Though I promise the comparison ends there. You are clearly a woman of quality, Miss Owens, whatever circumstances have brought you low." Zara's expression shuddered. "You do not know anything about me." "That is true enough. But I know fear when I see it, and I know the look of someone running from something terrible. I also know that whatever you have done, or wherever you have come from, you deserve a chance to rest and recover before facing what comes next." Mitchell leaned against the barn door frame, careful to maintain his distance. "I have to ride out to check the herd this morning, but I will be back by midday. If you are still here, perhaps we can talk. If not, I will not chase you. That is your choice to make." "Why?" Zara asked again, more forcefully this time. "Why are you being kind to me? What do you want?" Mitchell met her eyes steadily. "I want you to stop hiding in my barn like a criminal when I suspect you are the one who has been wronged. I want you to feel safe enough to come inside, eat a proper meal at a table, maybe sleep in a real bed. I want to help, Miss Owens. That is all. No conditions, no expectations." He left before she could respond, giving her space to think. Mitchell saddled his horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Copper, and rode out across his land as the sun climbed higher. The work was familiar and soothing, checking fence lines and water sources, counting heads in his herd of about 200 cattle. The physical labor helped settle his mind, though his thoughts kept returning to the frightened young woman in his barn. When Mitchell returned to the ranch around noon, he half expected to find the barn empty. Zara vanished like a ghost in the daylight. But as he led Copper back to the stable, he saw her standing in the barn doorway, the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. She had washed her face and hands using the water he had left. And, in the bright light of day, Mitchell could see just how striking she truly was. High cheekbones, a determined chin, and eyes the color of dark honey that watched him with a mixture of uncertainty and something that might have been hope. "I am still here," Zara said unnecessarily. "So I see." Mitchell began unsaddling Copper, his movements practiced and efficient. "Have you thought about my offer? Emma's room is empty while she is away in Sacramento. You would have privacy, a proper bed, and access to a bath. I promise you would be perfectly safe." "How can you promise that when you do not even know what I am running from?" Mitchell paused in his work, looking at her directly. "Because I am a fair hand with a gun, Miss Owens, and because I do not make promises I cannot keep. Whatever is chasing you, it would have to go through me first, and I am not an easy man to go through." Zara studied him for a long moment, and Mitchell let her look. He knew what she would see. A man of 28, tall and lean, with the sun-weathered skin of someone who spent his days outdoors, dark hair that needed cutting, and blue eyes that had seen their share of hard times. He was not handsome in the classical sense, his features too rough for that, but he was steady and solid, and right now he suspected that was what Zara needed most. "My husband is looking for me," Zara said finally, the words dropping like stones into still water. "Or rather, the man I was forced to marry 3 months ago is looking for me. Marcus Donovan. Have you heard of him?" Mitchell's jaw tightened. He had indeed heard of Marcus Donovan, a wealthy businessman from San Francisco with interest in railroads and mining. Donovan had a reputation for ruthlessness in business and an equally dark reputation when it came to women. There had been rumors, whispers of a previous wife who had died under mysterious circumstances, but Donovan's money and influence kept most people from asking too many questions. I have heard the name, Mitchell said carefully. I take it the marriage was not of your choosing. My father owed him money, a great deal of money. When he could not pay, Donovan offered to forgive the debt in exchange for my hand. Zara's voice was flat, emotionless, as if she were recounting something that had happened to someone else. My father agreed before I even knew about the arrangement. I was told on a Monday that I would be married on Friday. I barely met Marcus before we were standing at the altar. And you ran. Not immediately. I tried to be a good wife. I tried to make the best of the situation. Zara's hands clenched in the blanket. But Marcus is not a good man, Mr. Wayne. He is cruel and controlling, and he takes pleasure in causing pain. After 2 months, I knew that if I stayed, I would end up like his first wife, dead and buried with everyone pretending it was an accident. Mitchell felt a cold anger settling in his gut, the same righteous fury that had driven him to fight in the war, despite his doubts about the cause. How did you escape? He traveled to Sacramento on business, and I saw my chance. I took what little money I could find, stole a horse, and rode. I have been moving from place to place for the past 3 weeks, trying to stay ahead of the men he sent to find me. Last night they were close, too close, so I abandoned the horse and ran on foot. I saw your barn, and She trailed off, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. You are safe now, Mitchell said firmly. Donovan's men will not find you here, and even if they do, they will not take you. You have my word on that. You cannot stand against Marcus Donovan. He has money and power and connections. He could destroy you. Maybe, but I would rather be destroyed doing what is right than live comfortably doing what is wrong. Mitchell finished with copper and turned to face Zara fully. You cannot keep hiding in this barn, jumping at every sound, living in fear. Let me help you properly. Come inside, get cleaned up, and we will figure out what to do next. Together. Zara looked toward the house, longing and fear warring in her expression. If I bring my trouble to your doorstep, I will never forgive myself. The trouble is already here, Miss Owens. The question is whether you face it alone or whether you let someone stand with you. Mitchell extended his hand, not moving closer, just offering. What do you say? For a long moment, Zara did not move. Then, slowly, she unwrapped the blanket from her shoulders and took a hesitant step forward, then another. When she reached Mitchell, she placed her small, work-roughened hand in his larger one, and he felt the tremor that ran through her, the enormous courage it took for her to trust even this much. All right, Zara whispered. All right. Mitchell led her to the house, acutely aware of how fragile she felt, how much trust she was placing in a stranger. Inside, he showed her to Emma's room, a pleasant space with yellow curtains and a comfortable bed covered in a colorful quilt. He brought her towels and soap, showed her where the pump was for fresh water, and gave her privacy to bathe and change. Emma's dresses would be a bit large on Zara's slighter frame, but they would serve until something better could be arranged. An hour later, Zara emerged looking like a different person. She had scrubbed away the dirt and fear, combed out her dark hair so it fell in damp waves past her shoulders, and changed into one of Emma's simple blue day dresses. The transformation was remarkable. Without the grime and terror masking her features, Zara was genuinely beautiful, though Mitchell could see the shadows under her eyes and the way she held herself, still ready to bolt at the first sign of danger. Feel better? Mitchell asked from where he sat at the kitchen table, cleaning his rifle. Much better, thank you. Zara hovered in the doorway, uncertain. I am not sure I can ever repay your kindness, Mr. Wayne. Mitchell, and there is nothing to repay. Sit down, please. You look like a strong wind could knock you over. When she settled gingerly into a chair across from him, Mitchell set aside his rifle. I have been thinking about your situation. Donovan's men will likely search the area, asking questions in town. Red Bluff is not so large that a stranger can hide easily, and your description will draw attention. Zara's face paled. Then I should leave before I put you in danger. No, what you should do is stay put and let me handle things. I have lived in Red Bluff for 5 years. People know me, trust me. If anyone comes asking questions, I will know about it. Mitchell leaned forward, his expression serious. But we need to establish a story, something that explains your presence here. The truth would only put you at risk. What kind of story? My sister Emma is in Sacramento visiting family. You could be a friend of hers, someone she invited to visit the ranch while she was away. It is thin, but it might hold up to casual scrutiny. Mitchell ran a hand through his hair, thinking. Or we could say you are a widow, recently arrived from back east, looking to start fresh in California. That would explain why you keep to yourself. I am not a very good liar, Zara admitted quietly. Then we will keep you out of town as much as possible. This ranch is fairly isolated. Most days I do not see anyone except neighboring ranchers, and they tend to mind their own business. Mitchell studied her carefully. But, Miss Owens, you need to understand that this arrangement cannot last forever. Eventually, we will have to address the situation with Donovan directly. There is no addressing it. I am his legal wife. The law is on his side, not mine. Bitterness crept into Zara's voice. Even if I told people what he is, who would believe me? I am just a woman, and he is Marcus Donovan. The law may be on his side, but justice is not. There has to be a way to free you from this marriage. Short of his death, I cannot imagine what that would be. Mitchell did not respond immediately, his mind working through possibilities. The legal system in 1870 was not kind to women, especially women who had fled their husbands. Divorce was scandalous and difficult to obtain, requiring proof of adultery or extreme cruelty, and even then, a woman's testimony was often dismissed. Still, there had to be something they could do, some way to keep Zara safe and free. We will figure something out, Mitchell said finally. For now, focus on recovering your strength. You are safe here, Zara. I will not let anyone take you against your will. The way she looked at him then, with such desperate hope, made Mitchell's chest tighten. He barely knew this woman, yet he felt a fierce protectiveness toward her that went beyond simple compassion. Perhaps it was because he understood what it meant to feel trapped, to fight for freedom against overwhelming odds. The war had taught him that lesson well. The days that followed fell into a comfortable routine. Mitchell worked his ranch, tending his cattle and maintaining his property, while Zara slowly began to emerge from her shell. At first, she was skittish, jumping at unexpected sounds and keeping near the house where she could retreat quickly if needed. But as days passed without incident, she began to relax, helping with small tasks around the homestead, cooking meals, and tending the vegetable garden that Emma had planted. Mitchell found himself looking forward to returning to the house each evening, knowing Zara would be there. They talked during meals, sharing stories about their pasts. Mitchell learned that Zara had grown up in San Francisco, the daughter of a once prosperous merchant, whose bad investments and worse gambling habits had destroyed the family fortune. She had been educated at a proper finishing school, played piano beautifully, and had once dreamed of becoming a teacher before her father's debts had sealed her fate. In turn, Mitchell told her about his own past. He had grown up on a small farm in Missouri, the son of a blacksmith who died when Mitchell was 15. He had joined the Union Army at 19, more out of a sense of adventure than political conviction, and had spent 3 bloody years learning hard lessons about violence and loss. After the war, he had drifted west like so many other veterans, searching for a place to belong until he found this land outside Red Bluff and decided to make his stand here. "Do you ever regret it?" Zara asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the California hills. "Coming west, leaving everything behind?" "Sometimes," Mitchell admitted. "Emma is the only family I have left, and even she talks about moving back east where life is easier, more civilized. But this place, this land, it is mine in a way nothing else has ever been. I built this ranch with my own hands, survived droughts and cattle thieves and harsh winters. It means something, you know?" "I do know." Zara drew her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. "I never had anything that was truly mine. Everything belonged to my father, then to Marcus. Even my own body was not my own to control. Coming here, being able to make choices again, even small ones like what to cook for dinner or whether to weed the garden, it feels like breathing after being underwater for too long." Mitchell looked at her, really looked at her, seeing not just a beautiful woman, but a strong one, someone who had survived something terrible and was slowly finding herself again. "You can stay here as long as you want, Zara. I mean that. This ranch is big enough for both of us, and honestly, I could use the help. Emma will be back soon, and I'm sure she will be glad for the company. You barely know me. How can you trust me so completely? Because I am a good judge of character, and everything I have seen tells me you are a good person dealt a bad hand. Mitchell smiled slightly. Besides, you make better biscuits than Emma does, though I will deny saying that if she asks. Zara laughed, a real laugh, the first Mitchell had heard from her, and the sound was like music. For a moment the shadows lifted from her face, and she looked young and carefree, the way she probably had before Marcus Donovan entered her life. The moment broke when they both heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching. Mitchell was on his feet instantly, his hand going to his gun. "Get inside," he said quietly but firmly. "Lock the door and stay away from the windows." Zara did not argue, disappearing into the house with the practiced speed of someone who had learned to hide quickly. Mitchell stepped off the porch, positioning himself in the yard, where he had clear sight lines and room to maneuver. Two riders approached, silhouettes against the fading light, and Mitchell felt tension coil in his shoulders. As they drew closer, Mitchell recognized them as neighboring ranchers, Jake Patterson and his son Levi, and he relaxed slightly, though he kept his hand near his weapon. Jake was a decent man, honest and hardworking, and his son was cut from the same cloth. "Evening, Mitchell," Jake called as they reined in their horses. "Hope we are not disturbing your supper." "Not at all. What brings you out this way?" Mitchell kept his tone casual, friendly, though his mind was racing. "As a strange thing happened in town today," Jake said, dismounting. Levi stayed on his horse, nodding a greeting to Mitchell. Two men came through, well-dressed city types, asking questions about a young woman who might have passed through the area, dark hair, pretty, traveling alone. They were offering money for information. Mitchell's blood ran cold, but his expression remained neutral. "That's so? What did people tell them?" "Not much to tell. Nobody recognized the description, least not that I heard. But these men, they were insistent. Said the woman was married to Marcus Donovan up in San Francisco, that she had run off and he was worried about her safety." Jake's weathered face creased with concern. "Thing is, Mitchell, they did not seem worried. They seemed angry. Got the feeling that if they find this woman, it will not go well for her." "You think they are lying about why they are searching?" "I think Donovan's first wife died young and under circumstances that did not sit right with a lot of people. I think any woman running from that man probably has good cause." Jake looked Mitchell in the eye. "If you happen to know anything about this situation, I want you to know that I did not see or hear anything worth mentioning to those city men." Mitchell felt a surge of gratitude for his neighbor's discretion. "I appreciate that, Jake." "There is more," Levi spoke up from his horse. "They are planning to search the outlying ranches tomorrow. They have permission from the sheriff, said it is a matter of locating a missing person who might not be in her right mind." "The sheriff is going along with this?" "Sheriff Coleman is new, only been in the job 3 months since old Sheriff Briggs retired. He does not know the area or the people like Briggs did, and I think these city fellows dazzled him with their credentials and their story about a disturbed woman needing help." Jake shook his head in disgust. "They will probably reach your place by mid-morning tomorrow." Mitchell's mind worked quickly, considering options. He could hide Zara, but a thorough search might uncover her. He could claim she was someone else, but if Donovan's men had a photograph or detailed description, the lie would not hold. Or he could make a stand, refuse to let them search his property, though that would likely bring trouble down on both of them. "Thank you for the warning," Mitchell said. "I am grateful to have neighbors like you." "That is what neighbors are for." Jake remounted his horse, then paused. "Mitchell, if there is anything we can do to help, you just say the word. I have met men like Donovan before. They think money gives them the right to treat people like property. Does not sit right with me." After Jake and Levi rode off, Mitchell returned to the house to find Zara waiting anxiously in the kitchen. "I heard," she said before he could speak. "They found me. I have to leave tonight before they come here. No, running now would only make things worse. They would chase you, and without the element of surprise, they would catch you within a day." Mitchell began pacing, thinking aloud. "We need a different approach." "What approach?" "Mitchell, I cannot stay here. I will not let you sacrifice your reputation and your ranch for me. My reputation will survive, and the ranch is not going anywhere. But you are right that we cannot keep pretending nothing is wrong." Mitchell stopped pacing and turned to face her. "What if we told the truth? Not all of it, but enough. What if we said you came here seeking refuge from an abusive husband, and I offered you protection? That would make you complicit in harboring a fugitive wife. You could be charged with aiding me." "Let them try. This is California, not San Francisco. We do things differently out here, and people respect a man's right to protect someone on his property. Mitchell moved closer, his expression intense. Zara, I know you are afraid. I know you have every reason to be. But sometimes the only way to stop running is to turn and face what is chasing you. He will kill me, or worse, he will take me back and make sure I never have another chance to escape. Not while I am standing, and not alone. Jake Patterson is on our side, and I suspect others in Red Bluff will be too once they understand the real situation. Mitchell reached out, gently taking her hands in his. Trust me, Zara. Let me help you properly, not just by hiding you, but by standing up and saying that what Donovan did was wrong, that you have the right to choose your own life. Zara looked down at their joined hands, tears spilling down her cheeks. Why would you risk so much for me? You barely know me. Because it is the right thing to do, and because. Mitchell hesitated, then forged ahead, speaking a truth he had only recently admitted to himself. Because in these past 2 weeks, I have come to care about you, Zara. More than I probably should, given the circumstances. But I cannot stand by and watch you live in fear when I have the power to do something about it. She looked up at him, her honey-colored eyes searching his face. Mitchell, I am still married. Even if we somehow convince Donovan's men to leave me alone, I am still legally bound to him. There is no future for us, no matter how we might feel. Then we will find a way to break those bonds, divorce, annulment, something. But first, we face tomorrow. Mitchell squeezed her hands gently. Will you trust me? After a long moment, Zara nodded. Yes, I trust you. They spent the rest of the evening preparing for the confrontation to come. Mitchell cleaned his guns, more for the reassurance of the familiar routine than out of expectation he would need them. Zara moved through the house in a daze, straightening things that did not need straightening, her nervous energy palpable. Finally, as full darkness fell, Mitchell convinced her to try to rest, though he doubted either of them would sleep much. He was right. Mitchell dozed fitfully in a chair by the window, his rifle across his knees, while Zara tossed and turned in Emma's room. Dawn came gray and uncertain, clouds rolling in from the west, and Mitchell rose stiffly to make coffee and face whatever the day would bring. Zara emerged as he was cooking breakfast, her face pale but determined. I have been thinking, she said without preamble. When they come, I will go with them. I will not fight or protest. That way, they have no reason to cause trouble for you. Absolutely not. Mitchell's voice was sharp enough to make her flinch. He softened his tone immediately. I am sorry, but no. We are not surrendering you to those men, Zara. That is not an option I am willing to consider. But Mitchell, no, we talked about this last night. We face this together, or we do not face it at all. He set a plate of eggs and bacon in front of her, though he doubted either of them had much appetite. Eat something. You will need your strength. They did not have to wait long. Around mid-morning, just as Jake had predicted, 3 riders appeared on the road leading to Mitchell's ranch. 2 were the well-dressed city men Jake had described, hard-looking individuals with expensive clothes and cheaper morals. The third was Sheriff Coleman, a nervous young man barely into his 20s, who looked uncomfortable with his companions. Mitchell met them in the yard, Zara standing behind him on the porch. He had positioned himself carefully, making it clear that anyone who wanted to reach her would have to go through him first. Good morning, gentlemen, Mitchell said, his tone polite but cold. What can I do for you? The older of the 2 city men, a heavy-set individual with a thick mustache, spoke first. We are looking for a young woman, name of Zara Donovan. She ran away from her husband in San Francisco about a month ago, and we have reason to believe she may have passed through this area. He pulled out a photograph, remarkably clear for the era, showing Zara in an elegant dress, her expression vacant. Have you seen this woman? I have, Mitchell said calmly. She is standing right behind me. The admission clearly surprised all 3 men. Sheriff Coleman looked confused, while the 2 city men exchanged glances, hands moving toward weapons concealed under their coats. Well, that makes things simple, the mustachioed man said. We will just collect Mrs. Donovan and be on our way. No, you will not, Mitchell replied. Miss Owens, as I call her, came to my ranch seeking refuge from an abusive husband. I granted her that refuge, and she will remain here under my protection until such time as she chooses to leave. Now, see here, the sheriff started, but the second city man, younger and meaner looking, cut him off. The law is clear, Cowboy. She is his lawful wife, which means she is his property. You got no right to keep her. I have every right to offer sanctuary to someone in danger, Mitchell shot back. And women are not property, no matter what the law says. Miss Owens has told me about Marcus Donovan, about his cruelty and violence. I will not hand her over to men who will return her to that situation. What she has told you are lies, the mustachioed man said, his voice hardening. Mrs. Donovan is not well. She suffers from delusions and hysteria, which is why Mr. Donovan is so concerned for her welfare. He wants only to bring his wife home where she can receive proper medical care. That is not true, Zara's voice rang out clear and strong. She stepped forward to stand beside Mitchell, her fear evident, but her resolve stronger. Marcus Donovan is a violent, cruel man who beat me regularly and threatened to kill me if I ever spoke of it. I am not sick or delusional. I am a woman fighting for my life and my freedom. You see, Sheriff, the younger man said mockingly, she admits she is Zara Donovan. This is cut and dry. We are taking her back to San Francisco. Sheriff Coleman looked thoroughly out of his depth, his gaze darting between the city men and Mitchell. I am not sure what the proper procedure is here. If Mr. Wayne is making accusations of abuse, accusations from a hysterical woman and a cowboy who has clearly been seduced by her lies, the mustachioed man interrupted. Sheriff, we have a legal document here signed by Marcus Donovan giving us authority to retrieve his wife. Are you going to uphold the law or not? Before the sheriff could respond, more riders appeared on the road. Jake Patterson and his son, Levi, along with 3 other ranchers from the area, all men Mitchell knew and respected. They arranged themselves behind Mitchell, a silent show of support that spoke volumes. Morning, Sheriff, Jake said pleasantly. We heard there might be some trouble out at the Wayne Ranch. Thought we would stop by and see if our neighbor needed any assistance. The dynamic shifted immediately. The 2 city men were clearly skilled, but they were outnumbered, and the ranchers were all armed and looked perfectly willing to use their weapons if necessary. Sheriff Coleman visibly relaxed, perhaps seeing a way out of his dilemma. Now, let us all stay calm, the sheriff said, holding up his hands. There is no need for this to turn ugly. These gentlemen have a legal claim. Legal does not always mean right, Jake interrupted, his normally friendly face stern. I have been ranching in California for 20 years, Sheriff, and I have seen plenty of situations where the law failed to protect people who needed protecting. This looks like one of those situations. Are you threatening to obstruct justice? The younger city man demanded. Nope, just stating our intention to stand by our neighbor and make sure nobody gets hurt who does not deserve hurting. Jake's hand rested casually on his gun belt. Seems to me this is a matter that should be decided by a judge, not by hired muscle. I agree, Mitchell said quickly. Sheriff, I am formally requesting that this matter be brought before a judge. Let Miss Owens tell her story in court. Let witnesses speak to her character and condition, and let the law decide what is right. That is fair, is it not? Sheriff Coleman looked like he wanted to be anywhere else, but he nodded slowly. That seems reasonable. We can arrange a hearing. Mr. Donovan will never agree to that, the mustachioed man snarled. He wants his wife returned immediately. What Mr. Donovan wants and what the law requires may be 2 different things, the sheriff said, and Mitchell felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps Coleman was young and inexperienced, but he seemed to have a core of decency. I will send a telegram to San Francisco, inform Mr. Donovan that his wife has been located and is safe, and that a hearing will be scheduled to address the matter. Until then, Mrs. Donovan can remain in Mr. Wayne's custody. This is outrageous, the younger man exploded. We are leaving here with her right now, and any man who tries to stop us will regret it. His hand went for his gun, but he had barely touched the grip when 6 weapons appeared in the hands of the ranchers, Mitchell's rifle coming up faster than thought. The younger man froze, his face going pale as he realized how badly he had miscalculated. I would not, Mitchell said quietly, his voice colder than ice. This is my property, and these are my friends. You have been asked politely to leave and allow the law to take its proper course. If you choose violence, you will find yourself outmatched and bleeding in the dirt. Is that really what you want? The mustachioed man put a hand on his companion's arm, pulling him back. Stand down, Garrett. This is not over, not by a long shot, but we will play it your way for now. He turned his gaze to Zara, and the look he gave her was full of venom. You have delayed the inevitable, Mrs. Donovan, but but you have not escaped it. Mr. Donovan always gets what belongs to him. Always." The three men turned their horses and rode away, though the two city men looked back several times, their expressions promising retribution. Only when they were out of sight did the ranchers lower their weapons and the tension begin to ease. "Well," Jake said with a long exhale, "that could have gone worse." "Thank you," Mitchell said fervently, shaking Jake's hand and then the others. "All of you. I will not forget this." "What are neighbors for?" Jake replied with a slight smile. "Besides, I meant what I said about standing against men like Donovan. He might have money and lawyers, but we have something more important. We know what is right." After the other ranchers departed, Sheriff Coleman remained behind, looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Wayne, I hope you understand that I am in a difficult position here. The law is not on your side in this matter." "I understand, Sheriff, but I am asking you to give us time to present our case, to show that Miss Owens has legitimate reasons for fleeing her husband. Is that so unreasonable?" Coleman rubbed his face tiredly. "I will send that telegram, like I said, and I will schedule a hearing for next week. But you need to know that unless you can provide substantial proof of abuse, the judge will almost certainly rule in favor of returning her to her husband. That is just how these things go." "A week is all I'm asking for now," Mitchell said. "Thank you, Sheriff." After Coleman left, Mitchell and Zara stood alone in the yard, the weight of what had just happened settling over them. Zara was trembling, whether from fear or relief Mitchell could not tell, and without thinking, he pulled her into his arms, holding her close as she buried her face against his chest. "We bought some time," Mitchell said softly, stroking her hair. "Not much, but enough to figure out our next move." "I cannot win this in court," Zara said, her voice muffled against his shirt. "Even with your support, even with witnesses, the law will side with Marcus. Married women have no rights, Mitchell. You know that as well as I do. Then we will find another way." Mitchell pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "I made you a promise, Zara. I will not let them take you. Whatever it costs, whatever I have to do, you will be free." She reached up, touching his face with trembling fingers. "You have already given so much. Your safety, your reputation, maybe even your ranch if this goes badly. Why, Mitchell? Why risk everything for me?" "Because you matter," Mitchell said simply. "Because the thought of you suffering at that man's hands makes me want to burn down half of California. Because in these past 2 weeks, you have become important to me in a way I cannot fully explain. And because I believe, with everything in me, that you deserve to live your life on your own terms, free from fear and violence." Tears streamed down Zara's face. "I care about you too. So much it terrifies me. But Mitchell, even if by some miracle we win this fight, I would still be married to Marcus. There would still be no future for us. I could not bear to keep you tied to a woman you can never truly have." "One problem at a time," Mitchell said, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. "First, we keep you safe, then we figure out the rest, all right?" Zara nodded, and for a moment, they just stood there, holding each other in the morning sunlight, taking strength from the contact. Mitchell knew the battle ahead would be difficult, maybe impossible, but standing there with Zara in his arms, he felt something he had not felt since before the war. A sense of purpose, a reason to fight that went beyond mere survival. The week that followed was a whirlwind of activity. Mitchell rode into Red Bluff daily, gathering support from townspeople and making arrangements for the hearing. To his surprise and gratitude, he found that many residents were sympathetic to Zara's plight. Several women came forward with their own stories of abuse and powerlessness within marriage, though none would agree to testify publicly for fear of their own husband's reactions. Still, their private support bolstered his conviction that they were doing the right thing. Emma returned from Sacramento 2 days before the scheduled hearing, and her reaction to finding another woman in her home was complicated. At first, she was suspicious, worried that her brother had gotten himself involved in something dangerous. But after spending an afternoon talking with Zara, Emma became a fierce advocate, her motherly instincts aroused by the younger woman's obvious suffering. "That poor child," Emma said to Mitchell that evening after Zara had gone to bed. "The things she told me about what that monster did to her, Mitchell, it made my blood boil. We have to help her." "That is the plan," Mitchell assured his sister, "though I am not sure how. The law is not on our side." "Then we will make our own justice," Emma said firmly. "California might be wild and rough around the edges, But that means we have some flexibility in how we handle situations like this. Let me talk to some of the women in town. We will see what we can arrange." True to her word, Emma spent the next 2 days organizing, and by the morning of the hearing, a significant number of Red Bluff's female population had gathered at the courthouse. A silent but pointed show of solidarity. The sight clearly unsettled Donovan's lawyers, who had arrived from San Francisco expecting an easy victory. The hearing was held in the town's largest building, a combination courthouse and community hall that served multiple purposes. Judge Walter Harrington presided, an older man with sharp eyes and a reputation for fairness tempered by strict adherence to the law. Mitchell sat with Zara at one table, while Marcus Donovan's lawyers, 3 expensively dressed men from the city, sat at another. Sheriff Coleman stood to the side, looking uncomfortable, and the mustachioed man from the ranch, whose name turned out to be Frank Morrison, lurked in the back. Mitchell's heart nearly stopped when Marcus Donovan himself strode into the courtroom. He was everything Zara had described: tall, handsome in a cold way, impeccably dressed, with eyes like chips of gray ice. He looked at Zara with an expression of possessive fury that made Mitchell's hand instinctively go to his gun before he remembered where he was. Judge Harrington called the hearing to order, and Donovan's lead lawyer, a silver-haired man named Harrison Blackwell, immediately launched into his case. His argument was simple and legally sound. Zara was Marcus Donovan's lawfully wedded wife. She had abandoned her marital home without cause, and the law required her return to her husband's custody. He painted Donovan as a concerned husband worried about his mentally unstable wife, and Mitchell as a well-meaning but misguided rancher who had been taken in by a disturbed woman's fantasies. "The law is clear on this matter, Your Honor," Blackwell concluded. "Whatever stories Mrs. Donovan has told, whatever sympathy she has generated, the fact remains that she is bound by sacred vows to Mr. Donovan, and no man has the right to interfere with that union. We ask that you order her immediate return to San Francisco." Judge Harrington turned to Mitchell. "Mr. Wayne, you are not a lawyer, so I will not expect a formal defense, but I would like to hear your side of this matter. Why should I not order Mrs. Donovan returned to her husband?" Mitchell stood, acutely aware of every eye in the room upon him. He was a rancher, not a speaker, but he spoke from the heart. "Your Honor, Miss Owens came to my ranch in the middle of the night, terrified and injured, running from a man who had beaten her and threatened her life. I offered her sanctuary because it was the right thing to do, and because I believe that no law, sacred or otherwise, gives a man the right to abuse his wife." "That is a serious accusation," Judge Harrington said. "Do you have proof of this abuse?" "I saw the bruises on her arms and face when she first arrived, though they have since faded. I can testify to her terror, to the way she flinched at sudden movements and jumped at loud sounds. I can bring forward witnesses who will speak to her character and the legitimacy of her fear." Mitchell's voice strengthened as he continued. "But more than that, Your Honor, I ask you to listen to Miss Owens herself. Let her tell her story. She is not mentally unstable or delusional. She is a brave woman who made the impossible choice to flee rather than die at the hands of a cruel husband." "Your Honor, this is preposterous," Blackwell interjected. "Mr. Wayne has no legal standing to make these claims, and Mrs. Donovan's testimony is suspect, given her obvious emotional attachment to the man who has harbored her." "I will decide what testimony is relevant," Judge Harrington said sharply. "Mrs. Donovan, please stand." Zara rose on shaking legs, her face pale, but her jaw set with determination. Mitchell wanted to reach out and steady her, but he forced himself to remain still, letting her face this moment with the strength he knew she possessed. "Mrs. Donovan, I want you to tell me, in your own words, why you left your husband," Judge Harrington said, his tone gentler than it had been with the lawyers. Zara took a deep breath. "I left because I feared for my life, Your Honor. Marcus Donovan is a violent, controlling man who beat me regularly throughout our brief marriage. He would fly into rages over the smallest things. A meal not prepared to his liking, a word spoken out of turn, sometimes for no reason at all. He told me repeatedly that if I ever tried to leave him or told anyone about the abuse, he would kill me and make it look like an accident, just as he had done with his first wife." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Marcus Donovan shot to his feet. "That is a lie! My first wife died of pneumonia, a tragic accident that devastated me. How dare you—" "Mr. Donovan, sit down," Judge Harrington ordered. "You will have your chance to speak. Continue, Mrs. Donovan." "I have no physical proof anymore," Zara continued, her voice growing stronger. The bruises have healed, and Marcus was always careful to strike where the marks could be hidden by clothing. But I swear to you, on everything I hold sacred, that every word I speak is true. I would rather die than return to that man. Your Honor, you cannot possibly give credence to these wild accusations, Blackwell protested. Mr. Donovan is a respected businessman with impeccable credentials. He has never been charged with any crime. This is clearly the fantasy of an unstable woman trying to escape her marital obligations. Actually, a new voice spoke from the back of the courtroom, I might be able to shed some light on Mr. Donovan's character. Everyone turned to see a woman in her 50s, well-dressed and dignified, standing near the door. Mitchell did not recognize her, but he saw Donovan's face go ashen, and he knew immediately that this was important. "And you are?" Judge Harrington asked. "My name is Catherine Reynolds. I was the sister of Margaret Donovan, Marcus's first wife." Catherine walked forward with calm confidence, her eyes never leaving Donovan's face. "I came as soon as I heard that another woman was trying to escape my former brother-in-law." "Your Honor, this is highly irregular," Blackwell spluttered. "Mrs. Reynolds has no standing in this case." "I am allowing it," Judge Harrington said. "Mrs. Reynolds, please tell us about your sister." "My sister Margaret married Marcus Donovan in 1867. Within months, she began sending me letters describing his violent temper and controlling behavior. She was terrified of him. But, like Mrs. Donovan, she felt trapped by law and circumstance. Catherine's voice was steady, but laden with old grief. "The last letter I received from Margaret said that she was going to try to leave him, that she could not survive another day in that house. 2 weeks later, I received word that she had died of pneumonia after falling into a river and catching a chill." "A tragic accident," Donovan said through gritted teeth. "I was devastated." "Perhaps. But the circumstances were suspicious, Your Honor. Margaret was an excellent swimmer, having grown up on the coast. The idea that she would fall into a river and be unable to save herself never made sense. I tried to push for an investigation, but Marcus's lawyers and money made sure no serious questions were asked. My sister was buried, the case was closed, and Marcus walked away free to marry again." Catherine turned to Zara, her expression compassionate. "When I heard about you, my dear, I knew I had to come. I could not save my sister, but perhaps I can help save you." The courtroom erupted in noise, women's voices raised in support, Donovan's lawyers shouting objections, and Sheriff Coleman trying and failing to restore order. Judge Harrington banged his gavel repeatedly until finally the room quieted. "Mr. Donovan," the judge said, his eyes hard, "I find these accusations deeply troubling. While I acknowledge that no formal charges were ever filed regarding your first wife's death, the testimony we have heard today raises serious questions about your treatment of women." "Your Honor, I must protest," Blackwell began, but Harrington cut him off. "However," the judge continued, "the law is clear. Mrs. Donovan is legally married to Mr. Donovan, without concrete proof of abuse, without formal charges filed and proven in court. I have no legal basis to prevent him from reclaiming his wife." He looked at Zara with what might have been sympathy. "I am sorry, Mrs. Donovan, but my hands are tied. The law requires that you return to your husband." "No!" The cry came from Mitchell, who stood so fast his chair fell over. "Your Honor, you cannot do this. You know what will happen to her. You know, Mr. Wayne, I understand your feelings, but I cannot make rulings based on feelings. The law is the law." Judge Harrington's expression was pained. "Mrs. Donovan, you are ordered to return to San Francisco with your husband. This hearing is concluded." The gavel fell with a sound like a death knell. Zara made a sound like a wounded animal, her knees buckling, and Mitchell caught her before she fell. Around them, the women in the courtroom began to cry out, their voices raised in protest, while Donovan's lawyers moved forward to take custody of Zara. "No," Mitchell said again, his voice low and dangerous. He pulled Zara close, his body a shield between her and Donovan. "I will not let you take her. Judge, law, or no law. I cannot stand by and watch you send her to her death. Mr. Wayne, if you interfere with a court order, I will have no choice but to charge you with contempt and possibly kidnapping," Judge Harrington warned. "Then charge me, arrest me, do whatever you have to do, but you will not take her." Mitchell's eyes blazed with a fierce determination that made even the burly sheriff hesitate. For a long moment, The courtroom was frozen, everyone waiting to see what would happen. Then Emma Wayne stepped forward, followed by a dozen other women from Red Bluff, forming a human barrier around Mitchell and Zara. "You will have to arrest all of us then," Emma said calmly, "because we will not stand aside." Jake Patterson and the other ranchers moved to join them, creating an even more formidable wall. Sheriff Coleman looked at Judge Harrington helplessly, clearly unwilling to start arresting half the town. It was Marcus Donovan who broke the stalemate. He pushed past his lawyers, his handsome face twisted with rage. "Enough of this farce. Zara, you are coming with me right now, and when we get back to San Francisco, you are going to regret every moment of this little rebellion. You belong to me, and I will remind you of that every single day for the rest of your miserable life." The naked cruelty in his voice, the open threat, made even Judge Harrington flinch. And in that moment, Mitchell saw his chance. He pulled his gun, not pointing it at anyone, but simply holding it, a clear statement of intent. "Over my dead body," Mitchell said quietly. "That can be arranged," Donovan snarled, reaching for his own weapon. But before anyone could fire, Catherine Reynolds spoke again. "Actually, Marcus, there is one way out of this that might satisfy everyone." All eyes turned to her. She stood calm and composed, a slight smile on her lips. "The law says Zara is your wife and must return to you. But what if she were not your wife?" "What are you talking about?" Donovan demanded. "Annulment," Catherine said simply. "If the marriage can be annulled on legal grounds, Zara would be free, and you would have no claim on her." "There are no grounds for annulment," Blackwell said immediately. "The marriage was legal and has been consummated. That eliminates most possible grounds." "What about fraud?" Catherine suggested. "If it can be proven that Marcus misrepresented himself during the courtship, that he deliberately concealed his violent nature and the suspicious circumstances of his first wife's death, would that not constitute grounds for annulment?" Judge Harrington frowned thoughtfully. "Possibly. It is a narrow argument, but it might have merit. However, proving fraud would require substantial evidence and testimony. I can provide testimony about Margaret's letters, about the things Marcus did to her that he concealed from everyone else," Catherine offered. "And I suspect Mrs. Donovan can speak to similar misrepresentations made to her and her family." "This is absurd," Donovan growled. "I will not agree to any annulment. Zara is my wife, and she will remain my wife." "Actually, Mr. Donovan, you might want to reconsider," Judge Harrington said slowly. "Because if we pursue this line of inquiry deeply enough, if we bring Margaret's death back into question and examine it in light of Mrs. Donovan's accusations, you might find yourself facing charges more serious than a disputed marriage." The threat hung in the air. Donovan looked around the courtroom, seeing the hostile faces, the unified opposition, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered across his features. His lawyers huddled around him, whispering urgently, and Mitchell watched with held breath, hardly daring to hope. Finally, Blackwell stepped forward. "Your Honor, in the interest of avoiding a protracted and potentially damaging legal battle, Mr. Donovan is willing to consider an annulment. However, he has conditions." "Name them," Judge Harrington said. "First, Mrs. Donovan must sign a document agreeing never to speak publicly about the circumstances of their marriage or to make any further accusations against Mr. Donovan's character. Second, her father's debts, which were forgiven as part of the marriage arrangement, will be reinstated and must be paid within 1 year. Third, Mr. Donovan will receive financial compensation for the embarrassment and expense of this affair." "No," Mitchell said immediately. "Miss Owens will not be silenced, and she will not be forced to pay for her own freedom." "Then there is no deal," Blackwell said coldly. Mitchell's mind raced. The debts would be substantial, probably more than Zara's father could ever hope to repay. But Mitchell had money saved, profits from 5 successful years of ranching. It would wipe him out, set him back to almost nothing, but it would be worth it to free Zara. "How much are the debts?" Mitchell asked. "Mitchell, no," Zara whispered, understanding what he was thinking. "I cannot let you—" "How much?" Mitchell repeated, his eyes on Blackwell. $15,000, Blackwell said with a slight smile, clearly thinking the sum was prohibitive. It was an enormous amount, equivalent to several years of profit for most ranchers. Mitchell felt the number like a physical blow, but his expression never changed. "I will pay it, every cent. In exchange, you will grant the annulment with no conditions, no restrictions on Miss Owens's speech, and no further claims on her of any kind. Mitchell, that is everything you have worked for, Emma gasped. You cannot. I can and I will. Mitchell looked at Zara, his eyes soft despite the hardness of the moment. Some things are worth more than money. Some people are worth everything. Zara was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I cannot let you do this. I cannot let you sacrifice so much. It is already done, Mitchell said gently. Your Honor, do we have a deal? Judge Harrington looked at Donovan. Mr. Donovan, will you accept these terms? Donovan's face was mottled with rage, but he was beaten and he knew it. Between the threat of renewed investigation into Margaret's death and the resistance of the entire town, he had no good options. Fine, he spat. Annul the damn marriage. I will find a wife who appreciates what I offer. Then it is settled, Judge Harrington said, relief evident in his voice. I will draw up the annulment papers immediately. The marriage between Marcus Donovan and Zara Owens is hereby dissolved on grounds of fraud and misrepresentation. Miss Owens is free to go, with no further obligations to Mr. Donovan. The debt payment will be handled separately, with Mr. Wayne posting bond to guarantee the amount. He banged his gavel. This matter is concluded. The courtroom erupted again, but this time it was with cheers and applause. Women rushed forward to embrace Zara, crying and laughing, while the men shook Mitchell's hand and clapped him on the back. Through it all, Mitchell kept his eyes on Zara, seeing the disbelief and joy and profound relief washing over her face as she realized she was truly free. Donovan and his entourage left quickly, the businessman's face black with fury. As he passed Mitchell, he leaned in close. You have made a powerful enemy today, Cowboy. I will not forget this. Neither will I, Mitchell replied evenly. And if you ever come near Zara again, legal papers or not, you will discover just how unforgiving California justice can be. After the crowd dispersed and the legalities were settled, Mitchell and Zara found themselves alone on the courthouse steps, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. Zara looked at him with an expression of such complicated emotion that Mitchell's heart ached. You gave up everything for me, she said softly. Your savings, your security, years of hard work. Mitchell, how can I ever— You do not have to do anything, Mitchell interrupted gently. Money can be earned again. What matters is that you are free. You can live your life now, make your own choices, go wherever you want. What if what I want is to stay here, with you? Mitchell felt his breath catch. Zara, I care about you deeply. These past weeks have been the best of my life, getting to know you, watching you heal and become yourself again. But I would never ask you to tie yourself to me out of gratitude or obligation. You have just escaped one cage. I will not let you walk into another. It would not be a cage, you foolish man, Zara said, laughing through her tears. It would be a choice, my choice. For the first time in my life, I can choose what I want, and what I want is you. Mitchell Wayne, I want to wake up on your ranch every morning. I want to help you rebuild what you sacrificed for me. I want to stand beside you as your partner, not your burden, if you will have me. Mitchell cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. Are you sure? Because once I kiss you, once I admit how much I love you, there is no going back. You will be stuck with a stubborn rancher who talks to his cattle and occasionally forgets to shave for a week. I am counting on it, Zara whispered, and then she kissed him, right there on the courthouse steps in front of anyone who cared to look. It was a kiss that sealed promises and new beginnings, that transformed fear into hope and gratitude into love. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and smiling, Mitchell rested his forehead against hers. So, what happens now? Zara asked. Now we go home, Mitchell said, together, and we start building the life we both deserve. They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the ranch, with Emma serving as maid of honor and Jake Patterson as best man. Half of Red Bluff attended, a testament to how the town had rallied around their love story. Catherine Reynolds came as well, giving Zara her blessing and the pearl necklace that had belonged to Margaret, passing it on to a woman who had survived when her sister had not. The wedding was joyful and heartfelt, filled with laughter and dancing and the kind of celebration that marked not just a union, but a victory over darkness. As Mitchell and Zara danced their first dance as husband and wife, he pulled her close and whispered, No more hiding, no more fear. This is your home now, Zara Wayne. Not a secret, but a truth that everyone can see. Our home, Zara corrected, smiling up at him. And I will never take it for granted, not for a single day. The years that followed were not always easy. Mitchell had to work twice as hard to rebuild his savings, taking on extra work and making shrewd deals to recover what he had spent on Zara's freedom. But with Zara by his side, managing the household, raising chickens and selling eggs, tending an expanded garden, and keeping the ranch books with meticulous care, they not only survived, but prospered. 2 years after their wedding, Zara gave birth to their first child, a strong, healthy boy they named Matthew. He had his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair, and from the moment he entered the world, he was loved beyond measure. 3 years later came a daughter, Elizabeth, who inherited Zara's honey-colored eyes and Mitchell's stubborn determination. As the children grew, Mitchell would sometimes find Zara in the barn, not hiding, but simply enjoying the quiet. The first time it happened, about 5 years after that fateful night when she first arrived, Mitchell came upon her, standing in the same spot where he had found her that first time, moonlight streaming through the open door. "Zara," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. She turned, smiling. "I was just remembering. This place used to mean fear and desperation. Now it just feels like part of home." Mitchell walked to her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "No more hiding required." "No more hiding," Zara agreed, leaning back against him. "Though sometimes I still cannot quite believe how much my life has changed. How lucky I am." "We are both lucky," Mitchell corrected. "I was existing before you came, just going through motions. You gave me something to fight for, something to live for beyond just survival." They stood together in comfortable silence, listening to the horses shifting in their stalls and the distant sound of a coyote calling to the moon. It was a peaceful moment, a recognition of how far they had come from that terrified night when Zara had stumbled into Mitchell's barn with nowhere else to go. "Do you ever regret it?" Zara asked suddenly. "Giving up so much for me? We could have had so much more if you had kept that money." "I have everything I need," Mitchell said firmly. "A woman I love who loves me back. 2 beautiful children. A ranch that may not be the biggest, but it is ours, built on honest work and sacrifice. What more could any man want?" Zara turned in his arms, reaching up to kiss him softly. "You are a good man, Mitchell Wayne. The best man I have ever known." "And you are the strongest woman I have ever known," Mitchell replied. "Not because you never break, but because you put yourself back together every time, and keep going. Our children are blessed to have you as their mother." As they walked back to the house together, hand in hand, Mitchell reflected on the strange path that had brought them to this moment. A terrified woman in his barn, a confrontation with powerful forces, a sacrifice that had seemed impossible at the time, but now felt like the easiest decision he had ever made. Everything had led to this: a family, a home, a love that deepened with every passing year. The next decade brought its own challenges. Droughts came and went, cattle prices fluctuated, and there were years when money was tight and worry lines deepened on both their faces. But they faced everything together, Mitchell and Zara, partners in every sense of the word. They expanded the ranch slowly and carefully, adding more cattle, improving their breeds, and building a reputation for fair dealing and quality stock. Matthew grew into a young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did, learning to ride and rope and manage cattle with natural skill. Elizabeth became fascinated with books and learning, and Mitchell and Zara scraped together money to buy her every book they could find, encouraging her sharp mind, even when others suggested education was wasted on a girl. Emma remained a fixture in their lives, living in her own small house on the property and serving as beloved aunt to the children. She never married, declaring that she had seen enough of marriage's pitfalls and preferred her independence. But she doted on Matthew and Elizabeth, and was instrumental in helping Zara navigate the challenges of raising children on a remote ranch. When Matthew turned 15, he asked his father about the story of how his parents met. Mitchell and Zara had never hidden the truth from their children, but they had softened some of the darker details, wanting to protect young minds from the full horror of what Zara had escaped. Now, with their son on the cusp of manhood, they told him everything. They sat around the kitchen table, Zara and Mitchell taking turns explaining about Marcus Donovan, about the fear and abuse, about the desperate flight and the help offered by a stranger who became so much more. "So you spent everything you had to save Mom," Matthew said, looking at his father with new eyes. "You gave up your whole future." "No," Mitchell corrected gently. "I invested everything I had in your mother, and she gave me a future far richer than anything I could have built alone. Money is just money, son. People, love, family, those are the things that matter. Those are the things worth fighting for." "What happened to the man Mom was married to?" Matthew asked. "Marcus Donovan, did he ever come back?" "No," Zara said. "We heard through Catherine Reynolds that he married again, a much younger woman from a wealthy family. I have often worried for her, wondered if she is suffering the way I did. But there is nothing I can do without breaking the agreement that bought my freedom." "That does not seem fair," Elizabeth, now 12 and fiercely righteous, declared. "He should be in prison for what he did to you and to his first wife." "Justice and fairness are not always the same thing, sweetheart," Mitchell said. "Sometimes the best we can do is save who we can save and live our lives in a way that honors those we could not help." As Matthew approached his 18th birthday, he began courting a neighboring rancher's daughter, a bright and capable young woman named Sarah Chen, whose family had come from China to seek fortune in California and had instead found hard work and occasional prejudice. Mitchell and Zara welcomed Sarah warmly, recognizing in her strength and determination echoes of Zara's own journey. "Do you think they will make it?" Zara asked Mitchell one evening, as they watched Matthew and Sarah walking together in the twilight, clearly deep in conversation. "If they love each other the way we love each other, they will make it through anything," Mitchell replied. "Though I hope their path is easier than ours was." "Our path made us strong," Zara said. "I would not wish it on them, but I would not trade it either. Every hard moment brought us to where we are now." Mitchell pulled her close, still marveling after nearly 15 years of marriage that she was his, that this brilliant, resilient woman had chosen to build her life alongside his. "Have I told you today that I love you?" "Only twice," Zara said with a smile. "You are falling behind." "Then let me catch up. I love you, Zara Wayne. I love the way you hum while you work in the garden. I love how you read to the children every night, even now that they are nearly grown. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you make everything better just by being part of it." "Keep going," Zara said, laughing. "I think you are up to 5 now." Instead of answering, Mitchell kissed her, deep and long, a kiss that still held all the passion and promise of their early days together. When they finally broke apart, both smiling, Mitchell said simply, "I will never stop loving you, not in this lifetime or any other." Time continued its march forward. Matthew married Sarah in a beautiful ceremony that blended traditions from both their families, and they settled on a piece of land adjacent to Mitchell's ranch, building their own homestead with Mitchell and Zara's help. Within 2 years, they made Mitchell and Zara grandparents with the birth of twin boys, James and Jacob, rambunctious children who brought new life and energy to the family. Elizabeth, true to her independent spirit, announced at 16 that she wanted to become a teacher. It was an unusual ambition for a rancher's daughter in 1890, but Mitchell and Zara supported her dream, helping her apply to the new normal school that had opened in Sacramento. She was accepted, much to the family's pride, and left home at 18 to pursue her education. The day they took Elizabeth to Sacramento was bittersweet. Zara cried, though she tried to hide it, and Mitchell felt the weight of watching his little girl step out into a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. But they had raised her to be strong and smart and capable, and as they watched her walk into the school building with her head high and her shoulders back, they knew she would succeed. "We did well with them," Mitchell said as they rode the train back to Red Bluff. Both of them. Matthew with his good heart and his strong hands, Elizabeth with her quick mind and her determination. They will make their marks on the world. "They had good examples," Zara replied, squeezing his hand. "You taught them to be honorable and hardworking. I taught them to be compassionate and brave. Together, we gave them the foundation they needed. You did more than that. You showed them what it means to survive and thrive, to take broken pieces and build something beautiful." Mitchell looked at his wife, seeing the silver threads in her dark hair, the lines around her eyes that came from years of laughter and sunshine. She was in her mid-40s now, and to him, she had never been more beautiful. "You are an extraordinary woman, Zara Wayne. And you are an extraordinary man, Mitchell Wayne. We are blessed to have found each other." As they entered their 50s, Mitchell and Zara began to slow down, not from infirmity, but from a natural weariness that came with decades of hard physical labor. Matthew took on more of the ranch work, proving himself a capable manager, and Mitchell found himself with more time to spend with Zara, to simply enjoy her company without the constant pressure of survival and success. They took to sitting on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the California hills, talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes they reminisced about the early days, about that first terrifying night in the barn and all the moments that had followed. Other times they talked about the future, about the grandchildren who were growing so fast, about Elizabeth's letters from Sacramento full of her adventures and achievements. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Mitchell surprised Zara with a gift, a beautifully bound journal with her name embossed on the cover. "What is this?" Zara asked, running her fingers over the leather. "I thought you might want to write down your story," Mitchell said. "Not for publication or anything like that, but for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, so they know where they came from, what you survived, how strong their grandmother was." Zara's eyes filled with tears. "Mitchell, I do not know if I can. So much of it was so painful." "Then write about what came after. Write about the good parts, about the love we built and the life we made. Write about how you were found in a barn by a stubborn cowboy who refused to let you keep hiding." Mitchell took her hand. "Write about how you found your home." Zara did write, spending the next several years filling that journal and then another, chronicling not just her own story but the story of their family, of Red Bluff, of the changing face of California as the wild frontier gave way to a more settled civilization. She wrote about Marcus Donovan, about the fear he had inspired and the freedom she had found. She wrote about Mitchell's sacrifice, about the community that had rallied to protect her, about Catherine Reynolds and Emma and all the people who had played a role in her survival. But mostly she wrote about love, about finding it in the most unexpected place, about nurturing it through hard times, about watching it grow and deepen and transform into something unbreakable. She wrote for her grandchildren, yes, but also for herself, a way of processing and honoring the journey that had brought her from that terrified girl in the barn to the confident woman she had become. When Elizabeth came home for Christmas in 1895, bringing with her a serious young man named Robert, a fellow teacher she had met in Sacramento, the whole family gathered at the ranch house. Matthew and Sarah were there with their twins, now rambunctious 7-year-olds, and Emma, now in her 70s but still sharp and spry, held court from her favorite chair by the fire. As they sat around the dinner table, 3 generations gathered together, Mitchell looked around and felt a profound sense of contentment. This was what he had fought for, what he and Zara had built from nothing, not just a ranch or a family, but a legacy of love and courage, and standing up for what was right even when it cost everything. "I want to propose a toast," Mitchell said, rising with his glass. Everyone quieted, looking at him expectantly. "To Zara, the bravest woman I have ever known. You came to me with nothing but fear and hope, and you gave me everything that matters. You are my partner, my love, the mother of my children, and the grandmother of these beautiful boys. Everything good in my life stems from that night I found you in my barn, and I would make the same choice 1,000 times over. To Zara." "To Zara?" the family echoed, raising their glasses. Zara, tears streaming down her face, stood and moved to Mitchell, embracing him tightly. "And to Mitchell," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "who saw past my fear to the person I could become, who gave me not just safety, but the freedom to be myself, who taught me that love is not about possession or control, but about partnership and respect. You saved my life, Mitchell Wayne, in every way a person can be saved. I love you more than words can express." As the family celebrated around them, Mitchell held Zara close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the solid warmth of her in his arms. They had been through so much together, survived hardships and celebrated triumphs, and through it all, their love had only grown stronger. Later that night, after the guests had departed and the house had quieted, Mitchell and Zara took one last walk around the ranch before bed. It was a cold December night, clear and crisp, with stars brilliant overhead. They walked to the barn, and Zara stopped in the doorway, looking in at the familiar space. "Do you remember?" she asked softly. "I remember a terrified woman who had run out of places to run," Mitchell replied. "I remember thinking I had never seen anyone so frightened or so brave. I remember the moment I knew I would do whatever it took to keep you safe. I remember thinking you were either a saint or a fool to help me, Zara said with a slight smile. I could not understand why a stranger would risk so much for someone he did not know. Because you needed help, because it was the right thing to do. Because from that first moment, something in me recognized something in you. Mitchell turned her to face him. I know this might sound strange, but I think finding you that night was not an accident. I think we were meant to find each other, meant to build this life together. I believe that too, Zara said. Every terrible thing I went through, every moment of fear and pain, it all led me to you. And I would go through it all again if I knew you would be waiting at the end. They kissed under the stars. In the doorway of the barn where their story had begun, two people who had found each other in the darkness and built a life in the light. When they finally returned to the house, hand in hand, both felt the weight of years and the lightness of love, a perfect balance of history and hope. The years continued to pass, bringing joys and sorrows as all years do. Emma passed away peacefully in her sleep at 76, surrounded by family who loved her. Matthew and Sarah had another child, a daughter they named Emma in honor of her great-aunt. Elizabeth married Robert in a beautiful ceremony and moved to San Francisco, where she opened a school for girls from all backgrounds, inspired by her mother's story of surviving without education or resources. Mitchell and Zara grew old together, their hair turning silver, their hands becoming gnarled from decades of work, their faces lined with the maps of their lives. But their love never wavered, never faded. If anything, it deepened, becoming something beyond passion or romance, transforming into a profound partnership that defined both their lives. On their 40th wedding anniversary in 1910, their entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Matthew and Sarah were there with their 3 children, all grown now, and their own young families beginning. Elizabeth came from San Francisco with Robert and their 2 sons. The ranch house overflowed with people and laughter and love. 4 generations connected by the courage of one woman and the sacrifice of one man. As the party wound down and the sun began to set, Mitchell and Zara slipped away to their favorite spot on the porch. They sat in the rocking chairs Mitchell had built years ago, holding hands, watching the gold light paint the California hills. 40 years, Zara said wonderingly. Sometimes it feels like just yesterday I stumbled into your barn. Other times it feels like a lifetime ago. It was a lifetime ago. We were different people then, younger and scared and uncertain. Look at what we built, Zara. Look at what came from the one moment of choosing to help instead of turn away. Mitchell gestured to the house behind them, full of family and love. This is our legacy, not the ranch or the land, but the people, the love we created and nurtured and passed down. I never imagined this, Zara admitted. When I was hiding in that barn, shaking with fear, I never dared to dream I could have a life like this. A husband who loves me, children who make me proud, grandchildren who bring joy to my days. You gave me all of this, Mitchell. We gave it to each other, Mitchell corrected gently. You gave me purpose, Zara. You gave me something worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for. Before you, I was just existing, going through motions. After you, I was living, truly living. As darkness fell and the stars began to appear, Mitchell and Zara remained on the porch, content in each other's presence, needing no words to communicate the depth of their feeling. Inside, their family laughed and talked, the sound drifting out through open windows, a symphony of the life they had created together. Do you have any regrets? Zara asked suddenly. Anything you wish had been different? Mitchell thought for a long moment, then shook his head. No. Even the hard parts, even the sacrifices, they all had purpose. They brought us here, to this moment, to this life. I would not change a single thing. Neither would I, Zara agreed, though I hope our grandchildren and great-grandchildren have easier paths. I hope they live in a world where women are not trapped by law and custom, where love is chosen freely by both partners, where sacrifice is not necessary to save someone from cruelty. The world is changing, Mitchell said. Slowly, but it is changing. Women are starting to get the vote in some places. Laws are beginning to recognize that marriage is not ownership. Maybe by the time our great-grandchildren are grown, the world will be different enough that your story seems like ancient history. As long as they remember, Zara said, as long as they know what was sacrificed to give them their freedom, their choices, That is why I wrote it all down, so they would never forget. Mitchell squeezed her hand. They will remember. How could they forget the story of the woman who was found in a barn and told she did not have to hide anymore, that she had found her home? It is the kind of story that gets passed down through generations, that becomes part of family legend. The story of how we found each other, Zara said softly. The story of how love conquered fear, Mitchell added. They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them, two people who had traveled so far together, who had built something beautiful from the ashes of trauma and the seeds of courage. Inside the house, their family continued to celebrate, and the sound was music to both their ears, the proof that choosing love over fear, compassion over cruelty, had been the right choice all along. Mitchell Wayne and Zara Wayne lived many more years together, watching their family continue to grow and flourish. They saw great-grandchildren born, saw the world change in ways both wonderful and challenging. They survived the Great War, seeing their grandsons go off to fight and, mercifully, return home. They witnessed women gaining the vote in 1920, Zara crying with joy as she cast her first ballot, thinking of all the women who had come before her without that right. Through everything, they remained partners, their love a constant in a changing world. When Mitchell passed away peacefully in 1925 at the age of 83, Zara was holding his hand as she had been for 55 years of marriage. His last words were simple: "Thank you for letting me love you." Zara lived another 5 years, spending her time with her children and grandchildren, reading to the great-grandchildren, and finishing the last pages of her journals. She passed away in the same bedroom where she had first found safety and peace, surrounded by family. Her final words an echo of Mitchell's: "Thank you for loving me." They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky as blue and endless as the California horizon. Their gravestone bore simple words: Mitchell and Zara Wayne, partners in life, love, and legacy. The ranch remained in the family for generations, passed down from Matthew to his children and then to theirs. The barn where Zara had first hidden became something of a shrine, preserved carefully, with a plaque telling the story of the frightened woman who found refuge there and the cowboy who told her to stop hiding, that this was her home now, not a secret, And in the house, carefully preserved and passed down through the family, were Zara's journals, dozens of volumes chronicling a love story that began with fear and ended with triumph, proving that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is accept help, accept love, and let someone tell them they do not have to hide anymore. The story of Mitchell and Zara Wayne became part of Red Bluff's history, told and retold, adapted and embellished, but always carrying the same essential truth: that love can flourish in the most unexpected places, that courage can come from the most frightened hearts, and that sometimes the greatest act of heroism is simply refusing to look away when someone needs help. Their descendants spread across California and beyond, carrying with them the legacy of two people who chose each other despite every obstacle, who built a life on sacrifice and courage, who proved that home is not just a place but a person, a choice, a moment when someone says, "You are safe here," and means it with everything they are. And though Mitchell and Zara have been gone for nearly a century now, their love story endures, passed down through generations, inspiring others to choose compassion over cruelty, love over fear, and always, always to tell those who are hiding that they do not have to anymore, that they have found their home, and it is no longer a secret but a truth for all to see. In the end, that is what their story was truly about: the transformative power of being seen, of being valued, of being told that you matter enough for someone to risk everything to keep you safe. Mitchell saw Zara when she was at her lowest, when she had every reason to believe she was worthless and broken. And he told her through his actions and his words and his unwavering support that she was precious, that she deserved love and freedom and a life of her own choosing. And Zara, in turn, saw Mitchell not as a lonely rancher going through the motions of life, but as a man capable of profound love and sacrifice, a man who needed purpose as much as she needed protection. She gave him that purpose, and together they built something that outlasted them both: a family rooted in love, a legacy of courage, and a story that proved that sometimes the most important thing you can do is tell someone to stop hiding and come home. The barn still stands on what is now the Mitchell Wayne Historical Ranch, preserved as a monument to that fateful night in 1870 when two lives intersected and changed forever. Visitors come from all over to see where the story began, to stand in the place where Zara once trembled with fear and Mitchell first offered his protection. And though the people who lived that story are long gone, their love remains embedded in the walls of that barn, in the land they worked together, in the descendants who carry their names and their courage forward into the future. This is the story of how Mitchell Wayne found Zara Owens hiding in his barn and told her to stop hiding, that this was her home now, not a secret. It is a story of the American West, of survival and sacrifice, of justice delayed but not denied. But more than anything, it is a love story, pure and simple, about two people who found each other in darkness and built a life in the light, proving that love, when it is true and freely given, can overcome any obstacle and create miracles that echo through generations. Their love was their legacy, and it endures.